We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, and we're joined this week by Minnesota Democrat and House Ag Committee member Angie Craig. Congresswoman Craig, appreciate you taking a little bit of time to join us.
Oh, thank you. It's a real honor to be with you, Spencer.
So for starters, I guess the first question is going to kind of set the table for a lot of the other things that we're going to want to talk about. Obviously, the big issue of the week in Washington is securing more coronavirus relief and kind of the efforts on that. But it seems like a lot of the negotiations, based on comments we've heard in the press and from some of your colleagues, it doesn't seem like those negotiations were able to make much progress this week. So I guess I'll ask you, where do you think things stand right now in terms of negotiations to secure more coronavirus relief for the economy, but specifically for food and agriculture?
Yeah, so, for the life of me, I don't understand why the Senate Republicans waited 10 weeks to start working on a plan and putting it on paper. We passed the HEROES Act over 2 months ago now. And part of that for me and, Chairman Colin Peterson from Minnesota was we wanted to make sure that we had something in there for corn growers in particular, because, as we think about biofuels, as we think about, my district back home, the secretary has taken the position that we have not, he does not have the authority to authorize those direct payments to folks. So, I am just really surprised that the Senate has waited 10 weeks to get going here.
Mm-hmm. It seems like in discussions between some senators as well as the House and Senate in general, it seems like a lot of the conversation on food and agriculture issues is specific to whether or not there needs to be a level of specificity offered to USDA on if there were to be more funding offered to the department. I guess, where do you stand on that issue? Does Congress need to offer specifics to USDA in terms of how it would like this money to be spent?
Yeah, the USDA has told us that if we want biofuels producers to see any support, that it must be clearly outlined in the legislation. The secretary told me that directly. If we want our pork producers who in Minnesota were euthanizing their animals at the height of the food supply chain disruption to receive compensation for those animals, we have to spell that out explicitly in legislation. And my understanding is the Senate bill omits support to either of those communities. I support it 100%. I've been fighting for our family farmers. They thought we were coming into 2020, prices, were improving, everything looked pretty good, and it all kind of fell apart here as a result of COVID-19. So, I've been pushing my leadership for that direct assistance, and I certainly will continue to support direct assistance to the nation's farmers. The other thing, Spencer, that's just stunning to me is that they've left out, any food support, direct food support to families in their proposal. The pandemic has created record high unemployment, 33% contraction in GDP, and I've got pop-up produce food shelters that are miles and miles and miles long. We've got to continue to support our country, and in that way, we can support our nation's family farmers too.
Mm-hmm. And I don't have the exact language of the Senate legislation in front of me, but I think it says something to the effect of, this aid is intended to, assist producers and processors. And there's some Senate Republicans making the argument that the fact that it does include that processors language is enough to get the biofuel folks the assistance they need. I take it that's just not going far enough for you?
It's not going to. I want it explicitly spelled out. I have directly talked to the secretary and the undersecretary who don't feel like they have complete authority there, and in particular with pork producers don't have the authority. So let's give them the authority. Let's spell it out. Let's eliminate the uncertainty. Look, I think if anything during this pandemic we have discovered as a nation is that our food supply chain is absolutely a national security issue in this country, and that we need to be protective of that food supply chain. So let's make sure that the folks who are supplying us that food and that fuel are treated fairly and compensated for the work that they're fairly doing in this country.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about something you mentioned in a response to a previous question, that being food assistance for families. And we've talked to a few Senate Republicans, and they seem to have said, and we had some comments from Ranking Member Stabenow in our Daybreak podcast this morning, discussing the fact that there's some willingness to negotiate on a SNAP benefit. So what would you like to see if those negotiations were to transpire? What specifically are you looking for in terms of that expanded SNAP benefit and more coronavirus aid?
Well, look, I think, in the HEROES Act, we expanded SNAP benefits, and we continue to do that. I'd like to see us continue on the path that we've been on. What's interesting to me is it's almost as if public policymakers are losing their nerve. And look, I'm no politician. I didn't grow up a politician. I ran for Congress after working for 22 years in the private sector in positive export markets. So I understand that, my nation's farmers, all they want is a fair price, and they want open markets. And I tried to push for good trade deals. I was pleased to support and help get through USMCA last year. And I come from a farm family. My grandfather was a farm foreman whose farmer lost his farm in the 1980s farm crisis. So, I think if we look at this in totality, this is about supporting the economy. This is about making sure that folks who are unemployed continue to be able to contribute to the economy, that don't miss a mortgage, don't miss their rent. All of this works together, and we've got to be bold. The virus is bold, and the virus is going to determine when we're done here, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. I want to wrap up talking about a lot of the discussion we've had so far has been about the next aid package, but I want to talk about the previous efforts here for a little bit as we wrap up. Specifically, when we're looking at food and agriculture, some of the chief programs that were used in this previous package were the coronavirus food assistance program, obviously the $16 billion in direct payments, the Farmers to Families food boxes, as well as a number of producers, a number of agribusinesses were able to utilize the Paycheck Protection Program. I'm wondering, looking back at the CARES Act and that legislation and the implementation of it, how do you assess the coronavirus relief efforts of the federal government up until this point?
I think that, the PPP program, the Small Business Administration, they were very slow to allow the ag producers into the program. And so that was something that my colleagues and I were howling about from day one, is that needs to be opened up immediately to family farmers. And so, look, I think the efforts of the government, I'd give it probably a C+ so far. Obviously, these were new programs. The EIDL program in particular has been a bit of a disaster because it's been run by the federal government at the federal level. The 7A lending programs that executed the Paycheck Protection Program, I think, were much more successful. But I don't think we have been quick enough to react to the impacts in our food supply chain, keeping workers safe, keeping those processing plants open, making sure that those pork producers had an alternative to shooting their hogs. I mean, it's just been such a tough time here in our communities. And so I would say that we have to continue to support the economy. That the goal here is really, as we look at GDP contraction of 33% reported yesterday, the goal is to keep the economy running so that once we solve the public health crisis, we can stand it back up and we can prevent ourselves from falling into a depression in this nation. So I'm just going to continue to support the administration when I think they're right on these farm issues. I'm going to tell them I think they're wrong when I think they're wrong. At the end of the day, we've got to continue an aggressive approach because the virus is that aggressive.
So obviously a lot of things going on, especially in the food and agriculture corner of the response to this coronavirus. And Congresswoman Craig, we appreciate you taking a little bit of time to join us to discuss them.
Thanks so much. It's an honor to represent family farmers in my district.
For Congresswoman Angie Craig, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.